Hey, MixRPD here. So been planning to do this video for a long time to show you my mix template. There is no time to waste here. No time for an intro or anything. No, that's rude. Let's do an intro. So every time I get a song to mix, this is what I load up and bring the tracks into here. So there's two purposes, right? So the main purpose for the mix template is to not have to set up a bunch of stuff over and over again. As quickly as possible, get down to the creative aspects of mixing the music and not have to worry about the technical things of setup. But at the same time, I want to be organized. And then the other factor is I want options to go to quickly, which kind of goes in hand, right? I don't want to be looking for plugins and having to pull stuff up. I want as much stuff set up as I can ahead of time. That being said, I have all kinds of plugins, but they're all turned off. It's all just options that I can go to. Let's get into it. Okay, before we get into it though, let me just interrupt myself for a second here to say that I'm gonna have to do this in at least two parts because as you can see, there is just a lot here to go through. So in this video, we're going to deal with the master bus, the mastering chain, basically stuff where the entire mix is going through it. Then in the second video, the second part, we'll get into the individual instrument buses here, and I'll start running some actual audio through it. And we can check out all these different effects, parallel chains. There's just an unbelievable amount of stuff here. So here we go, part one. I use Sonarworks room and headphone correction. So this is going to be just on the stereo output here, right? This is just for me to hear a more level version, a more balanced and flat version of the audio. So this is how the template would open up with my room correction here. So I know that I'm on the correct one, room or headphones. So that's off. Then I have a marker track here, what they call a marker track in Cubase. So I can set, you know, if here's where the chorus starts or here's where a verse starts or something like that, I can set a marker right there. And then I can instantly go to that point whenever I need to, and I can name it. Also, if you have a point in the song that you need to mark just in terms of like a very accurate position to get back to later, say like, you know, this is where the drums need to come in or something, and maybe it isn't even right on a beat or it's not to a click or something like that. These markers can save your ass. So putting a marker like that, you always know that it's going to be there and you won't have to worry. You can always get back to it. Okay, then we come to the bus stop. So this is where I have all my whole routing system is here, right? The main thing to understand is that everything goes down to one of three things. It's these guys here. See, we have instrumental bus, all vocals bus, and effects bus. So everything in the mix is going to filter down to one of these three group channels here. So it's either going to be an instrument, a vocal, or an effect, like a separate send effect. So that's the heart of the system. And then I do mastering and mixing all in one project. That's a little bit unusual, I think. Most people, they tell you to use a separate project or, you know, even send it to someone else if you can. But a lot of people, if they can afford a mix, they can't necessarily afford a mastering engineer separate. So I've learned to do both, and it all goes hand in hand for me. So here we have my mastering chain. So this is the last thing before it all exits the program and gets exported. So this is the only plugin that's actually on when the template loads. So this is just going to be catching any overs. It's just pulled down less than a decibel. Then before that, we have the ozone. So I'm often going to be using this in mastering. Before that, I have a couple of soft clippers. So it can be good to sometimes put a soft clipper, like the ozone has that built into the maximizer. So these days, honestly, I'm usually using the maximizer. Sometimes even if I don't use the limiter on this guy, I might use the upward compression and or the soft clip as well. So it can be good to put a soft clipper sometimes before a limiter if you're using a final limiter, just to get a little bit more loudness and retain punch. Because the more you push through a limiter, the more you push the mix through a limiter, the more it sort of softens things. And if you're looking for punchy drums and stuff like that, then that can be, too much limiting can kind of kill that. So yeah, I have a couple other options here. The T-Rex clipper, every once in a while this hits. And I don't use this guy as much anymore, but This has a clipper built into it here on this push control and a few other control, like this magic control. Sometimes it's just what it says, it's magic. Not very often, but every once in a while, it's a thing. We have the Oxford inflator here. Sometimes I like to use this on the master. Sometimes I use it on more individual things like a vocal or whatever it may be. This is how much of the effect you're getting. This curve is going to push it forward or backward, so you'll get a different sound out of that. Forward tends to be a bit more aggressive. And yeah, it's got a couple other things, like the band split here can be good if you have like a lot of bass. And usually I use the clip, but sometimes turning it off is a thing. And yeah, that's the Oxford inflator. And then I use this more frequently, not all the time, but I've definitely shown this in mixes before. So this is like a mid-side processing EQ here, where the low frequencies are being expanded in the center channel, so in the middle, and then the high frequencies are being expanded on the sides. So that can give more width and more sort of oomph and punch. Kind of an old mastering guy trick. I have a separate template for mastering that's sort of split off from this one that I have some different stuff going on with. Some similar stuff, but some different stuff too. That's just more customized to mastering specifically. That's if I'm mastering a song that I didn't mix. So I would be using this in a song that I'm mixing, and then the mastering is just the final chain there. But before that, we have the master bus itself. So this would be basically what I would consider to be the end of my mix before it hits the mastering chain. So first up, we just have an EQ. On a lot of my channels, you'll just find probably a Pro Q3 or a Waves REQ. Just to see what's up. Sometimes I might just want to be checking the level here, or if any work needs to be done, it's there for you. So just the less grabbing for plugins I have to do, the better. And then we have a couple of tape options here. So first we'll look at the Acoustica. So it's kind of got like some EQ built into it. So where are we here? This has, yeah, here a little bit of 60 hertz and a little bit of 12 kilohertz, it looks like, boosting. It also has some other toys like compression and whatever, but I mostly just use the tape and the EQ. So sometimes I might use that guy. For me, this one, I mean, there's a million things you can do with it. So I often will use this setting. Sometimes I might use a different setting on it. It's a pretty complicated plugin. I tend to not get really into the nitty-gritty of things too much, because the whole idea for me with the mix template is to stay in the creative brain. Sometimes you might need to get into things, but the more you start analyzing things and stuff, it's like, you know, you're on the wrong side of the brain sort of thing. So more frequently I might be using the ATR 102 here, and often in conjunction with the EQ, the API EQ here. So sometimes I'll touch the top end or the bottom end of this, or even more extensively sometimes, but often I won't even touch the EQ and just run it through as an amp, and it can sound really good. It does, you just gotta listen, right? You put it on and you just feel the vibe. It does something to the middle, it does something to the sides, it does something to the overall frequency response, and sometimes it's a positive, sometimes it's not the right thing. But often in conjunction with the ATR 102 tape here, this is sort of set up generally the way I want it. Sometimes I turn the transformer off, but mostly I'm leaving it like this, and then I might just play with the high frequency control here. It's just a little, it's going to be sweetening it a little bit by default, but you can pull that back or you can go further. And this is a really good way to check how much is too much in terms of high frequency. But it sounds very different than boosting with an EQ. So it's just another tool in the box. But then the other thing with that is going back to the EQ here. Sometimes I might be pulling back the level here just so it's not hitting these tapes too hard if I am using them. And then after the API 560 EQ that I already talked about, we have the Pultec EQ. So this is a top and bottom, low frequency, high frequency kind of thing, right? And this is a passive EQ, so it sounds very natural, and it's different sounding than, you know, most of these other types of EQs, right? Like the 560 is another analog one, and it's definitely got its own sound to it and everything, but this is more like what they call like an active EQ, right? Like it's affects the phase and stuff like that. So it's got its own sound. API tends to have a lot of punch, right? So API, I think punch, and then something like a Pultec, it's like the low end. It tends to just bring up a big sea of low end instead of being punchy. It's more like smothered, I guess you'd say. But it's a beautiful and natural sound. And yeah, I'm often using these guys. And same thing, just putting, sometimes I might not even touch the EQ on this. I might just leave it as is, not boosting or cutting anything. And just running the audio through this just has a sound, a bigness that often just sounds better. And then maybe I just might back the output off here a little bit because it does get a little bit louder. And then we have a couple of distortion, saturation options here. So the SSL saturator, SSL native X saturator. I think that's right. So yeah, this guy is lovely. I love this guy. Usually if I'm using it on the full mix, I will back the wet dry knob off here so it's not full on saturation signal, it's blending the saturation with the dry signal. And then yeah, I would play with the gain. Usually I'm shooting for around the -18 mark, but sometimes it's less than that. Usually it's not more, but never say never. The second and third harmonics here. So third harmonics is going to be more modern and sharp, and second order harmonics is more like tube distortion, so that's sort of warmer, rounder. And then the depth control here, like sometimes going 100% on the depth is dope. Like on drums, I'll have this on the drum bus as well, and that can be great on drums. The shape control is useful. It's a great plugin. And then we have the decapitator here too on the Neve setting. You can see this is already backed off to 50-50 wet dry. And then this is an interesting one, this Q clone here. This, you can't actually control the EQ. It's just got a bunch of presets, all of these different presets. And what these EQs are is actually modeling different analog units, right? So you can, there's a different version of the plugin where if you have your own hardware EQ, you can capture the curves of those EQ units. So this is like, it's like the most boring looking plugin you've ever seen. And at first I was like, wait, I don't understand. I can't change it. But you don't change it. You just load a different preset until you get the one you want. So this is one that I like that has a little, I mean, you can see it just has a little bit of a high end lift and a little bit of a very bottom low end cut. And sometimes it's just the thing like nothing else. I wouldn't say I use it often though. And then the last thing I have on the master bus here is this MX 200 EQ. So this is set up in mid-side mode. So let's just go through some of the things that I would typically use on this. The mono maker, so wherever you set the frequency, that frequency and below will be in mono on the whole mix here. So I usually don't go too high up with this, but somewhere around 30-40 hertz can be good, but I don't always use it. And then the stereo width, occasionally I use it, and if you don't push it too far, then yeah, it's really nice. Even going like 1%, 101%. So 100 is default, no change. So even just widening 1% sometimes can do a little subtle thing that's really nice. And then the mid-side processing. So the left side of the plugin here would be the center signal, the mid. And then the right side of the plugin would be the side signal, so the left and the right. So what I have set up by default is that in the side signal, it's high passing, so rolling off the low frequencies at 50 hertz, and I don't ever touch that. If I use this, then that's where it's staying. And then on the high end, in the center, low pass filter, so this is going to be rolling off the high frequencies. And then this is a bit variable where I set it, but anywhere between, say like, well, as high as 30 kilohertz, the highest that it goes. Anywhere from there to say maybe 18 kilohertz would be about the lowest I would go generally. And it's also a fantastic sounding EQ. So sometimes I might do this in mid-side and touch up some of these EQs. It's again, very natural sounding. Sort of like the Pultec, but different. A little bit more frequency options for one thing. Okay, so picking it up with this titanium bus here, this is basically just an offshoot of my master bus. But for processing reasons, in Cubase, one of these chains will go on one CPU core on your computer. So I like to just split some of these heavier things off, like this guy here, this titanium, just onto a different channel. So it's not all on the same processor core. So that's just a technical reason there. But I'm also not afraid to reorder these or whatever. Like I'll pull up the mixer here and just, move this plugin over here or do whatever, right? Like if I want, say, an EQ, say like my Pultec EQ or something like that, if I want that before or after the compressor, I'll move things around according to what the sound I want on the particular track. And so this titanium compressor here, this is basically, it's a TubeTech multiband is what it's emulating. So it's 3 bands, right? This on the bottom here is the low, then the mid frequency here, and the high frequency. And it has cutoffs. So 100 hertz and down is low. Middle frequencies are everything from 100 hertz up until 4.8 kilohertz, and then 4.8 kilohertz and up is the top band here. So I have to make a decision if I'm going to use this. I definitely don't use it on everything. When I first got it, I wanted to use it on everything because it has this amazing 3D sound, but it's not right for everything. So first of all, what I'm listening for is when I put this on, all the thresholds here are at 0. So this won't be actually doing any compression if I put audio through it, but it does have like what I call an insert quality, right? Where just as soon as the audio is going through it, it changes the sound in a certain way. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing with this. And because it's the three band, multi-band thing, it does have a certain sound to it. Just like mid-side processing sometimes, the way, as soon as you put it through, like the MX EQ that I have here on the master bus, sometimes as soon as you put it through this, it just does a certain thing, and that can be good, but sometimes it's not the right thing. And so right away, I just know I'm not going to use it. So same with this, but basically I would go through here and I would mute the other 2, and then I would just listen to the high band, and then I would set the threshold, and then I would repeat the process for the mid band and the low band. Some other compressors that I might use here, the SSL bus compressor, more likely to use it on maybe like a rock track or something like that. Sometimes backing the mix off is good. I'm pretty much always using the sidechain, so this is gonna let the bass frequencies through the compressor. Because the bass frequencies are generally gonna be what hits a compressor first. So if you just ease off the bass, that can free up the compressor to work a little bit more naturally. In terms of the attack, like usually I'm going to be leaving the attack on the slowest that it goes here, 30 milliseconds. I'm trying to let the most punch through possible. I'm often using the quickest release. The auto release can be good too. Other settings can be good, but usually I'm going to go between either the quickest release or the auto. In terms of ratio settings, I'm probably going to be using somewhere between 4:1 and 1.5. The germanium here, honestly, like I don't really use this guy very often. When it's the thing, oh my god, it's like it can be amazing, but it's usually too much. It's really thick and gooey, and if you have something that's maybe thin, some acoustic thing, or I don't know, I mean it's hard to say. Like it depends on the mix. Maybe just the way I mix doesn't jive with it that often, but it's very much not the thing unless you find a track where it is, and then it's very much the thing. So anyways, a couple of controls to highlight on this quickly are the germanium drive and the feedback control here. So these two make a huge difference on the character of the sound. Other than that, your standard input, ratio controls, etc. like that. I really like this Acoustica Fairchild Aqua Ultramarine 4. Anyway, so the way this works is you drive it in with the input here. So you can back off the threshold here to nothing, and you can just drive the input and use it as an amp. So that's got a sound to it. And then you put the threshold in and you start to get some compression. And then there's the time constraints here. So there's no separate attack and release on a Fairchild style compressor. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. So 1 is the fastest. That's typically used quite a bit. 5 and 6 are actually program dependent. So that means that the audio that you put through it, basically the compression action that you get depends on the audio that you put through it, the source. It behaves differently based on what you put through it, basically. Whereas like the 1, 2, 3, 4 settings are just the fastest is 1 and the slowest is 4. And that's the attack and release together. So basically this titanium bus is all about different compressors that I might use. Like I'm not going to use all of these, obviously. I'm going to maybe choose one of these. Okay, so that's it for part 1, but stay tuned for the second part. Got a whole song queued up and ready to go here, and we're going to run it through the template. We're going to look at all the individual instrument buses, the effects, parallel chains I have. There's a whole bunch of goodies here to get into. So stay tuned. Like I said, stay tuned.